Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zeus Backstage. My name is Zeus, and today I am backstage with Dr. Gina Possin. How's it going, Gina?
How you doing, Zeus?
I'm all good, thank you. If you're new to the channel, guys, please give us a like and a subscribe. It would really help the channel. Gina and I are here to talk about wrestling in psychology in wrestling. Just before we start, Gina, anything you want to plug social media wise?
Sure. Check out my podcast, The Work. That's where I talk about wrestling, how that kind of parallels with the workplace, how sports is kind of a workplace, and how we kind of put those two together.
And links will be in the description, guys, for all of Gina's social media work. And Gina, can we just get a kind of brief background as to, your background in psychology, kind of where you sit within the psychology space?
Sure. So I have a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, and what that is really how humans behave in the workplace. And I do a lot of looking at things like talent, performance, what gets rewarded, how cultures are shaped. And I'm really interested in how sports is a workplace as well. So, what my training kind of covers is like things like hiring, leadership, team dynamics, motivation, burnout, culture, change, and how organizations really kind of shape behavior. And I saw a parallel between that, obviously, and what things happen in wrestling specifically. I also am a fan. So obviously, that's probably why my interest was piqued. And I thought, I could do a lot of parallels here and show people what types of things the business does, but also a lot of things that they do in ring as and outside the ring.
Cool. Yeah, it's an
Mhm.
interesting crossover, isn't it? Psychology and
Yeah.
wrestling. So I'm glad we get to have this chat. I want to open up on wrestling fan psychology, if that's all right with you.
Yes.
Faces, heels, things like that. So from your perspective, what is it that makes people connect so strongly with archetypes such as faces, heels? Are there basic psychological reasons why people cheer and boo a particular wrestler?
Sure. So I think just from a basic foundation, we a lot of times will root for the good guy because from a moral standpoint, we want the good guy to win. And so that's for years and years and years, that's kind of how it's been is you root for the good guy because you want the good guy in the story to win. And that's just from a moral place. Um, we've seen a shift, I think, over the years, and that's probably gone back from, I would say, the Attitude Era of rooting sometimes for the anti-hero or the heel, just because of when they've stood up for their beliefs or for something that's been wrong in the situation. Um, and then there's also that, I would say, subsection of people who like to root for violence. It just is what it is. Um, so you've got kind of these different, and anything with human behavior, I would say, is a pie.
Hmm.
You never have the entirety of people who are rooting for one thing because of this. There's always factors. There's always pieces of behavior that are attributed to different things. So I would say there are people who are rooting because of this. There's people who are rooting because of this and that. Um, I will say that over the past couple of years, for sure, we've seen a shift in more people, from what I've observed anyway, more people rooting for the heel. And I think that that is kind of been because there's more of a moral gray area in that people will ask questions. Why are they becoming a heel? Why are they, or not even necessarily a heel, but an anti-hero? I think heel gets thrown around very loosely
Yeah.
lately. Um, but in any story, there's usually a baby face and a heel. And right now we kind of have people that are riding the fence, I would say, in most storylines. So the people who we would say are the heel are maybe not necessarily full out heel, but we'll call him a heel in this point. And I think we were in a space yesterday where somebody said a protagonist and an antagonist might be a better terminology for this, where the antagonist would definitely be kind of in that moral gray area, but we take a look at and question what made them get to that point. And that's something that we haven't always gotten to. We've started asking more of those questions, like what happened to them to get them to that point. And I think like one strong one that's getting me thinking right now is Drew McIntyre. Like what drove him to that point to get him there. And so we see a lot of people cheering for the heel because of that. And so we have a lot of those situations, I think, right now. Specifically, Randy Orton is another one that, you can tell WWE wants people to cheer for Cody Rhodes, but people are cheering for Randy Orton instead.
Yeah. I think you made a good point as well about the kind of turn around the Attitude Era. Because I think in WrestleMania 2000, it was the first time a heel had won a WrestleMania main event.
Yes.
Because prior to that, it was always, Hulk Hogan, babyface wins. And then the Attitude Era, we kind of saw a turn because, the fans changed, didn't they, in that kind
Right.
of era. So I guess that's kind of been an ongoing process to where we are now, where you have people like Drew, Randy, Kevin Owens to an extent.
Yes.
Hangman Adam Page, I thought was a good example as
Yeah.
well in AEW. But no, it's interesting to see how different fans treat things differently over the time as well. It's kind of like a generational thing. When it comes to fan interaction with wrestling, one thing we see a lot, particularly online, is sort of parasocial relationships developing between fans and wrestlers, which are always kind of one way, aren't they? Can you explain how these might develop between where a fan genuinely believes they know the wrestler, and it's kind of a strange phenomenon, isn't it?
It is. I think in wrestling, there's more access to wrestlers than there is
Hmm.
to, say, any type of other celebrities, movies, sports figures. And by sports figures, I mean other sports such as like NFL, um, basketball, any other large sports. Um, there's more access. You have wrestlers who will follow you back. You have wrestlers who might comment on something, with you, interact with you a little bit more. You have wrestlers that have, um, they'll go to more autograph signings, more types of interaction activities that they just make themselves a little bit more available. However, with that comes people thinking that they have more access then, that they're entitled to more access, that they are also, that they know people closer, that they have that bond. In addition, by seeing them every week on their TV all year round, every year, they've formed what I would say they feel like they have that relationship with that wrestler. They know that wrestler, even though that's a character. No matter what, when it comes down to it, that is a character that they see on TV. And one thing that people have to remind themselves is it's a character because they changed their character over time. And I know we see it gradually a lot of times, so it's might be hard to understand that. And usually there is somewhat of a level of authenticity within their character. When they're off screen, they are a totally different person. And we might tend to forget that when we see them week after week after week after week. We see them on social media a lot of times being that same personality. And there is that level of kayfabe that is embedded within their character. It's not as much as it used to be. I mean, when you think about wrestling, it used to be no matter what, they had to stay within that kayfabe. And that was a totally different that was very hard on their lives. I mean, we talk about certain wrestlers who really got tied up into it. Raven's one that I think right
Yeah.
off the top of my head. But there's people who push back on that over time. Like, I want to be my own person when I'm not in my job, right? um, but because of all of that, people have formed these ideas in their head that these are my friends, right?
Hmm.
And we do see that with certain, I would say, fandoms. I'm thinking of like hardcore fandoms, like the Marvel fandoms, the Twilight fandoms,
Yeah.
those hardcore fandoms. There was also some parasocial relationships within those that got to be a little extreme, but I would say it's definitely up a whole other notch within the wrestling community.
Yeah, and you make a good point because obviously it's difficult for wrestlers, isn't it? Because
Hmm.
they want to and they're contracted to kind of engage with fans in
Yeah,
a way that maybe other industries aren't. So it's like that. Well, they can't not do it, but when they
right.
do it, they're sort of almost opening opening a fictional door to some people to make them believe that they have access. Do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts on why it affects some people and not others? Is there any kind of is it a loneliness thing? Is it kind of what kind of things drive this type of behavior for some people?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole spectrum of reasons that it could be. Um, I would there are some loneliness, I think, aspects. There might be where they truly believe that these people are their friends, where maybe they don't have any close friendships in their own personal lives. Um, there may just be a lack of like I'm thinking right now. I should explain what I'm thinking in my head is I've been at shows before where people will um, reach out and touch people. And to me, I
Hmm.
guess I personally don't think that that is acceptable behavior because you should have permission to just reach out and touch people. Um, but I guess I understand you're excited to touch a fan and say I touched a celebrity. But for me, I just think that there's certain boundaries, and some people don't understand boundaries. Um, and that's just maybe I think of conscientiousness as a personality trait, as some people just don't have. There's different levels of conscientiousness. There's that extroversion, introversion. Some people are really extroverted and they just are very excited and want to touch people, talk to people. There's certainly different levels of your upbringing and your development over time and what you've been exposed to. I think over time and your personal belief systems, how you've been influenced throughout your life. If that's something that you've been exposed to over time and you believe that that is acceptable behavior, then you will continue to do that as well. So there's all of those things that kind of play into whether or not you feel that that's acceptable behavior. There's a myriad of things I think that that could be playing into that kind of behavior. But again, it's just in my head. I'm thinking of examples like touching people when you probably shouldn't be. Um, the people who kind of swarm people like Rhea Ripley. Um, and a lot of that is pure excitement and you wanting to get into I got to meet her and not thinking of the fact that just because you ran and got there, there's also 100 other people thinking the same thing at the same time and not thinking of how that affects her as a human being. Uh, and so to me, that goes back to that conscientiousness and not understanding how your actions are affecting another person.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And Rhea Ripley's a good example because she
Mhm.
is very popular,
Yeah,
has a very active fan base, and we've seen some extreme examples, haven't we, of people finding out their addresses. I think Sonia Deville had somebody enter her home, and it always reminds me of the Eminem song "Stan," which I think
yeah,
has aged tremendously well in terms of this kind of behavior. So if you've not listened to that song, go listen to it. It's
yeah,
a real shocker looking back on that song and how it's written. Um, you mentioned you've been to live events. I wanted to
yes,
ask, is there any kind of, do you see a difference in how people behave towards faces and heels at live events than online? Online, it tends to be a bit more the Wild West, whereas I don't know if this is true, but I imagine that live events is a bit more concealed, a bit more kind of manageable at live events than it is online?
Yeah, I would say, a prime example of this, I would definitely point to where online the negative voices, I would say, are the loudest
Hmm.
online. And it seems to be that's where the algorithm will always pick up the most negative voice and amplify it. And that's one, and then negativity breeds negativity. So if
Yes, it
you
does.
see negativity, that will just get louder and louder and louder because people will jump on that. In real life, in the arena, people want to be part of the show. They want to be part of whatever excitement is going on. So my mind immediately goes to Jey Uso. So so in the shows you will see things like that really manifest, really explode, and there it's a complete disconnect between what's going on in the show and what's going on online. And I would say that that is true for what's happening online is a small percentage compared to what's happening to the larger wrestling community. And when I say community, I mean the larger audience of people who are watching. And so the business decisions that WWE makes is probably more so for that larger community and the
Hmm.
audience that's there versus what's being said online.
Yeah, because it is kind of like an echo chamber online, isn't it? And I fall into it as well. Where we have this illusion that what we see online is everything that's available. And, if you see 100 tweets that are negative about Jey Uso, it's like everybody must hate Jey Uso. That's all I can see. But then you see 30,000 people doing the yeet and things like that. And it kind of opens your eyes into, we are in like a chamber, aren't we, online?
Yeah. And it's difficult because I know that the business decisions, because that is part of what I do, is I look at, with IO psychology, I help businesses make business decisions. That's
Hmm.
part of my job. And so there's so many factors that go into those business decisions, and like merchandise is a huge, decision factor. And so if they're you know, selling out of Jey Uso's merchandise, of course they're gonna be pushing Jey Uso.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, is he rough on a promo? Sure, but I guess they're gonna do what's making them money when it comes down to it, because they are a business, they're not a charity. And that might not be a popular answer, but it's the truth.
Yeah, it is a reality. And
Mhm.
just to pivot slightly on Jey Uso. So
Yeah.
when it comes to Jey Uso doing the yeet, from
Yes.
an organizational perspective, when whoever in WWTK is thinking up this, are they thinking psychology of how this is going to resonate with audiences before they is that part of the thinking, do you
Yeah.
think, about how they
They
produce
are
this?
absolute I hear so many times in the interviews that they do, um, when it's wrestling, when it's the leadership, the creative, I hear the word psychology so often, so
Hmm.
I know that's at the forefront of many decisions that they make. They are thinking through a lot of the psychology. I know they use psychology to manipulate a lot of things that happen. And by manipulate, I don't mean in a bad way. Manipulate is just, changing how people react to things. And I know we plan on talking about that a little later, but um, they're using it for a number of different decisions. They use it for things that happen in the ring, things that happen with the fans. Um, yeah, they're gonna do it so that people react differently to how people they're gonna do it how people react to heels versus
Hmm.
faces. You know, um, I don't know if we can talk about right now, if you want to, of wh why I think part of why they brought in Pat McAfee.
Yeah, I think
If you think
we
this
should
is a
say,
good spot,
I mean,
or do you
yeah,
wanna
sure. I
save
mean,
that for later?
I've been waiting to talk about this for a long time. So we are recording this on Saturday, the 4th of April, which means that last night on SmackDown, Pat McAfee was revealed to be the person on the phone to Randy Orton, which I think, to say the least, got quite a raucous reaction. A lot of people weren't happy, including myself. But yeah, we can talk about that. So how would you kind of gauge this Pat McAfee scenario in terms of psychology, given what we know so far?
So my take on it anyway, I know there's a number of reasons why they did it, but my take on it is why now? Why did they do this in this way? Is people, when we're talking about heels and faces, Randy was supposed to be the heel in this situation. Cody is the face.
Hmm.
And it was not coming off that way. The crowd, at least for not from the fan standpoint, the crowd was still chanting and cheering for Randy no matter what he did and booing Cody Rhodes. People are sick of Cody Rhodes. They're sick of corporate Cody, QB Cody, whatever you want to call him. They're sick of it. And no matter what Randy did, and it was like they kept dialing up the heat every week, and it didn't matter what he did. They were still cheering and chanting for Randy. They brought Pat McAfee out last night. And he, there's a big part of it where I do think that some of this is to bring back the Attitude Era, like he was talking about. And so I respect and I understand that aspect of it. I get it. However, when he went on social media then afterwards and said, if Randy does not win at WrestleMania, I am never coming back.
Yeah.
As soon as he did that, people started cheering for Cody
Hmm. Yep.
almost immediately. And I think that right there was the manipulation that I'm talking about. That they said, all right, we need that little manipulation. And then they had Cody come out with almost, I would say, heelish, not heel, not as a heel, but heel-ish type attitude. And they're like, all right, well, people want the heel. Cody, give them some of that heel-ish. They want you to do that. And he even came out and said, I hear you. I see what you want. You want the dark hair.
Yeah.
You want, you know. So we got a little sprinkle, I would say. It wasn't even a dash of what I wanted. It was a sprinkle of what I wanted. But we got to
Hmm.
see a little bit of that from Cody. But it got it to at least that right direction so that people could justify, I think, cheering for Cody. And that was them using just a little bit of the psychology to manipulate the fan base to start cheering for Cody and start booing Randy. But they're not really
Hmm.
booing Randy, they're booing Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's how they're using Pat McAfee in this story. They're like, okay, well, they're definitely not going to boo for Randy, but we can get him at least to boo for that side by using Pat McAfee.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I saw the tweet about saying if Randy loses, I will not be part of wrestling anymore. It's kind of like it's like, okay, well, they don't like Cody Rhodes. Let's find somebody they hate more than Cody Rhodes.
Right.
That we can just to kind of by default lift Cody up from a crowd reaction perspective. So I think that makes total sense in terms of the rationale behind it. And I guess that leads us nicely on into wrestlers go through stages, and especially wrestlers who are active for a long time. And, fans change when sometimes wrestlers don't. We look at John Cena, for example. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think some fans switch from loving a wrestler to hating them, and also vice versa? When a company, either changes their character or doesn't change their character. I wanted to know, like, what happens psychologically? Is it just a case of burnout, or are there more things at play here?
I think there's a few things in play. Like with Cody, I think he- it was the same thing for so long. It got stale. Um, People were just sick of him being like nobody can be that good for that long.
Hmm.
And when I'm actually going to be tune into the work because I'm going to do a topic about this.
Yep.
When
In the description.
somebody, it's going to right, it's going to be my next topic that I do. When somebody has, when somebody's a leader or has that big title for a long time, they might get to be too power hungry, too powerful, think they have too big of an ego.
Mm-hmm.
And people just don't like that. They're sick of it. They just don't, I don't want to hear it anymore. Um, or they might change slightly, You just see that arrogance about them and you've just had enough. And I think that's part of it. People that I'm thinking like that have been in that situation might be Cody or Roman. I know people have a different I've got my Roman shirt on, but people have a different problem with
Yeah.
Roman is that he just didn't defend his title enough or he wasn't showing up enough. And I know that that was the problem then. Now that but the other thing with Roman and it's funny is I would say he's still on just as much now that he was then, but people like him now. So that's an interesting one. But it's a shift because I think now he doesn't hold the title. He's fighting for, I would say, some things that were right. And it was that morality that made people stand behind him. So in the going back to, I think, the fighting for what's right. And when people see other people do that, they'll stand behind that wrestler. So if there's a person who, um, Stone Cold did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have different wrestlers who will stand up for what they believe in. And I think right away, I'll even bring this up, right away when Wyatt Six came in, they were very strong because they were doing that. They were standing up for, um, I'll say the little guy or the people who are getting kind of picked on. They were
Mm-hmm.
standing up for them. People stood behind them. We've kind of lost the plot on that one. We need to bring that back. But uh we've got I'm trying to think of I had another one in my head, but I can't think of it like a recent one, but we will see people kind of turn around on that. Now, on the other side of things, we saw Sami Zayn used to be like that, used to stand up for what was right. Now he's kind of turned into like this victim, whiny little bitch that
Mm-hmm.
that everything, oh poor me, woe is me, everything I should be getting more than what I'm getting. Please give me. And then he just inserts himself kind of everywhere that I don't think he should. And we see everybody kind of turn on him
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah, and he was getting booze last night as well, and
He
I
was.
know that, and I guess that there's things that they can do because you'd think all it would take is a character change or something, wouldn't you? So Cody Rhodes, for example, if you saw Cody Rhodes undertake the Stone Cold Steve Austin archetype
Mhm.
and fight against TKO, and if that was a whole on-screen thing, then I imagine he'd be, even though he'd still be a babyface, he'd probably be a lot more receptible to the fans, wouldn't he?
Right.
Because he's
Right.
standing up against the big guy, if that makes sense, the man, like
Yeah.
Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's really interesting. I want to talk about workplace psychology,
Yes.
which is obviously
Yes.
your major
That
field
that is my
in
field.
wrestling. Obviously, wrestling has, you could argue, a very unique backstage environment because
Yes.
it's all kind of stars, big egos. There must be hierarchies that form within locker rooms. How do you think these things affect wrestlers day to day in a work life? Like being surrounded by so many egos, how do you think that kind of affects them?
So I think it depends both on like formal leaders and informal leaders. So
Hmm.
obviously you have the formal leaders like Triple H, Shawn Michaels,
Hmm.
Tony Khan,
Yeah.
right? We've got the formal leaders. Then you have veterans that have been there for a long time that people look at who are more the informal leaders.
Okay.
Um, and they have what I would say is credibility that can pretty much, like stabilize any room, they can even stabilize the arena. Um, they'll also be great role models, mentors. Um, they can reduce any kind of uncertainty that might be around. The one thing I really can think of right now is when Jon Moxley really stepped up in AEW. Um, I mean, for Chris Jericho, I would say, and Bryan Danielson also were in on that. But I really think of Jon Moxley standing up and being like, look, this is how it's going to be. I'm standing up as a leader. That one really stuck out in my mind, the whole speech that he gave. He really stood out as a leader at that moment. But they were definitely in a time of some strong turmoil. So we got to see a piece of that, but I know that it was even stronger backstage.
Yeah.
But he was letting people know before the rumors kind of spread that, look, I've stepped up as a leader. We've stepped up as leaders. This is going to be just fine. And so when we get to see just a little tiny piece of that, I know that those types of things are going on tenfold
Yeah.
backstage. And you could see it shortly thereafter. Um, the things just in the ring got better because it was a disaster right before that. You could see everything kind of falling to shambles. And so when things like that start happening and you see things in ring, some of the point I'm getting at, when you see things in ring kind of falling apart, you can pretty much assume things backstage are falling apart as well. You see this in business. When things are starting to fall apart, I'm going to go as far as like just a restaurant. Food starts to taste like crap.
Hmm.
Time is it takes too long for things to come out. Everything's kind of falling apart. Things are not running smoothly in the back.
Yeah.
Like there's no communication, all of that. Leadership probably sucks. Nothing is a fine-tuned machine.
Yeah, and we've seen some famous examples of this, haven't we?
Yeah.
CM Punk, like you just mentioned.
Yes.
I think the other example, Charlotte and Tiffany last year with the shoot kind of stuff in the ring. Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan, famously in 2005.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of scary to think that, like you said, we only see a fraction of that. So imagine what it's like backstage,
Right.
and not just for the wrestlers involved, but the surrounding wrestlers as well. What kind of impression that gives to young talent, etc.
Right. And so I also think of like Karrion Cross talking about how he would give ideas to leadership
Hmm.
and they would say, yeah, I don't think we're going to use that. And then they steal it and use it for something else.
Wow.
Or we see a cookie cutter version, in my opinion, of him and Scarlett, of Alistair and Zelina. To
Yeah.
me, it's the same thing. So are they using all of the same ideas that were given to them by Karrion Cross? And we see a lot of that in business
Hmm.
of, you give your idea to your manager and they say, no, I don't think I'm going to use that. But then you see them use it somewhere else and take credit for their own as if it were their own. And that can cause some real animosity. It can cause you to maybe quit, go someplace else. Um, you can have things like that happen in between two wrestlers, for example. Maybe you told your coworker about an idea and then they went and told leadership, hey, this is my idea. And so
Mm.
they took that as their own. That can cause some problems. And then when you have that animosity between you might not work so well in the ring together. You might have a slip up and then there's a botched spot, or maybe something happens on purpose, which I'm not accusing anybody of doing that,
No.
but it could happen. But still, safety is a concern, I would say, only because if you're not fully trusting the other person, accidents happen.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And I guess from a psychology point of view, if you are in the ring with somebody, you have to be psychologically motivated to work with that
Right.
person. So that, yeah, I get what you mean. So I guess like when there is a locker room and, everyone's kind of competing for the same spots, a lot of wrestlers get accused of politicking throughout the years, Hulk Hogan being the biggest example. Cody Rhodes gets it, Roman gets it, Sami Zayn gets it, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Um, with these politics and power dynamics, do you think it's inevitable? And what kind of stress do you think this can cause other talent?
Yeah. So part of me wonders if I feel like this is in any business. If you play politics, you kind of move up. You get the favorite moves, the favorite spots. It's tough. It's really tough. Can it benefit you? Yes, but then you get the um, backlash from other talent. It can also bite you if you don't perform the way that they want you to, and you get to a point where you you don't want you push back, you might not want to do what they want you to do. They could drop you like at so fast and move on to the next because they're just wanting you to do what they want you to do. Like, it's not that if you're playing politics and you're falling into that line, you're really not doing yourself any favors necessarily of um well, they're gonna get to know me better, and then we're gonna work together well because they're gonna see how valuable I am. No, that's not how it works. All you're doing is playing into what they want you to do. And so there's that psychological aspect of the person's thinking that they're going to get to a point where leadership sees them more valuable. But what really happens is leadership just sees you as a pawn. And unfortunately, other talent then just gets upset because you're playing their games and they're not getting their chances. And so that does create like this conflict backstage. We have seen this, I would say, with Jade, kind of brought this up a little bit recently. Of whether or not this is happening, I don't know. Like, I'm just saying this is an example of what I've saw brought up. I wouldn't say for sure that like Rhea's playing politics or anything like that. I think Rhea's a very good wrestler, so I think she's done a great job, but um I would say there are certain wrestlers that probably have been and instead of saying playing politics necessarily, I just call them yes men, yes women.
Yeah.
They'll just do whatever. But I do understand at a certain point you do have to you can't always push back either. If you want to be successful, you kind of got to do the job. That's the job.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a fine tightrope to walk, isn't it?
It
And
is. It
I
is.
imagine this must be difficult for when this kind of thing happens. It's difficult for the leadership as well. So,
Yeah.
we know for a fact how difficult it was for Tony Khan to manage the CM Punk Hangman Young Bucks elite situation.
Yes.
We haven't really had much publicity about the WWE side of that. I don't think anything in WWE has kind of broken out mainstream like it did with Punk in AEW. But I would imagine, and you can probably tell me more on this, is that from a management point of view, it must be very stressful trying to manage all of those talent who are disgruntled for that reason.
Yeah. When you have, and I mean, CM Punk at the time was one of the top draws, right?
Yeah.
And so I know Tony has had difficulty since then that was a difficult decision for him because what do you do when you have all of your talent fighting, um, and you don't want to lose money? I mean, no matter what, when you have a business, it comes down to the money. And so you have to make your decisions based on the bottom line. What do I do to make sure that we can stay in business? I mean, no matter what, yes, you love your people and you want to do whatever you can to make the people happy, but you can't make the people happy at the expense of staying open and staying a business. And so there was a certain point where you have to look at it and go, can we viably stay open without CM Punk? And that was something that he had to look at and say, is this something we can do? Luckily they could, but it was a very difficult decision to make. They were close. You could tell they were close, but that was an ongoing situation that just got more and more toxic.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think you're right.
when it gets to that point where it's not just a one-on-one situation and it's a one on everybody in the locker room, that's when you have to look around and go, what percentage is this affecting? And I think it started to get to the point where it affected like the fan experience, and it affects, once it gets to the point where it's affecting your audience, your customer
Hmm.
experience, that's when you have to make a change.
Yeah. When it comes to the pecking order in wrestling companies, you've already kind of made mention that sometimes it's similar to normal businesses. Are there any kind of lessons from wrestling, that type of backstage pecking order that could apply to regular office jobs or vice versa? Do you see any kind of similarities or differences?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's an exact parallel.
Hmm.
To a point, it's an exact parallel. There's obviously differences, right? But um, yeah, you've got your corporate headquarters and your big dogs. You've got TKO. Like I'm gonna look at WWE for just example here. You've got your corporate headquarter um parent company, right? Okay, so I'm looking at, in a business, you've got your corporate headquarters, the president of the company, that you've got your board a lot of times, right? All of that. And then you've got your CEO or the um, manager leader of the company, right? You've got Triple H. Stephanie's in there somehow. I'm trying to figure out how, but she is.
Yeah,
She's definitely a
unofficially.
decision maker.
Yeah.
We've seen that. And then you've got your creative team, which I would say um, is like a cabinet of sorts, or a first VPs, line of
Hmm.
managers. You've got that group of people. Then you have your and I would put that more as a VP level, right?
Hmm.
Then you have your title holders, which I actually
Hmm.
would call them like your managers, because
Mm.
they are kind of they do make decisions, I think. They're kind of the leadership. Um, and then you've got the people who are vying for that position,
Hmm.
who want that position as far as wrestlers. Um, and then you've got, the newbies that come in.
Yeah. Your jobbers.
And you've got the people in between, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
people in
Yeah. Yeah.
between.
I
So
guess that makes
to
sense.
me,
Yeah.
like if I'm looking at a hierarchy, that it's kind of like that, an organizational chart, it kind of goes kind of
Yeah,
just
because I guess
top down like that.
if you take like a stereotypical business model, you'd have like, your contact center workers, then you'd have your team leaders and your managers, and then your heads of
Right.
function, etc. And that kind of
Right.
follows a similar
Yeah.
tower,
I think
doesn't it?
it's
Yeah.
it's very similar to that, and when I talked about like those mentors, those veterans that have been around along, I think of those kind of like those team leads that,
Hmm. Yeah.
they're really cheering everybody on. Like I think of a Rey Mysterio as kind of like a team lead, just kind of leading everybody on. And occasionally
Yeah.
he's hopped up to that manager, but maybe, he's stepped down and taken a little step back a little bit
Hmm.
for now.
Yeah. You look at
Kind
Undertaker being one of the historic, like, big locker room leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot
Yeah.
of times I think in university terms, just because I am a professor, so I think in university terms, I think of, The Undertaker as a professor emeriti, right? He's
Okay.
retired, he's moved on, but we still highly respect him. He can come teach anytime, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. That's interesting. I want to move on to the narratives, the storylines, which is,
yeah,
our bread and butter as wrestling fans, most of us. So wrestling storylines I often see as kind of just long running soap operas with a bit of violence in between.
yes,
So how do narratives kind of emotionally hook us and keep us coming back? And because we've had countless examples where, the Bloodline being the biggest recent example, going way back, Stone Cold, Vince McMahon, the NWO, really kind of great storylines, mega powers that really just kept us hooked. What is it that keeps us hooked to these sort of storylines?
so I think, fans know a good storyline when they see one, I think. And they start fantasy booking the second something comes out. They'll start reading clues. I, how many times do we see online, a space will open, like who's on the phone with Randy, or This was huge with the Bray Wyatt stuff,
The White
the
Rabbit,
Wyatt
yeah.
Six stuff. Like everybody would be looking for all of the clues, trying to figure out the mystery. People love a good storyline and trying to figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have something like that to keep people engaged and trying to figure out this or trying to figure out that, they will kind of check out. It's no different in my mind than watching straight professional wrestling or boxing
Mm-hmm.
or MMA or it to me then you've moved into just the sport of it.
Yeah.
When you have a strong storyline, people become emotionally invested and emotionally engaged, and they're more likely to care about the characters. They're more likely to care about the stakes and the outcomes of it. And that's what part of what makes wrestling so strong is because of the stories. That also blends in, I would say, like that repeated exposure, the live crowd response, performance levels of, whether or not somebody had a really strong performance, and then like the character arcs, how well they're doing. The audience, I wouldn't say isn't just watching like events. They're watching a live performance. They're watching motives play out in real time. They're watching betrayals. Right? I'm thinking like today, you said what today was. Today is also stand and deliver. So we're watching a big one that we're excited about is Zarya and Sol Ruka. So we're gonna watch that play out live today, and we're really excited for that. We're watching alliances, how those form. We're watching redemption stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all really about the storytelling, and then that's where we start to like feel something. And if that's not there, we've checked out.
Yeah. And I think a good example is the Bloodline in 2023 Royal Rumble when Sami Zayn turned on Roman Reigns. Like, I can't describe the emotions that went through my mind and body when that happened because I was just so invested. And it was, I wouldn't call it a parasocial relationship, but it was like I was there and I was with them. And, it kind of affected me on emotion. I don't even know these people, but I guess that's, like you say, that's what a good story does, isn't it? It
Hmm.
gets you invested in what you're watching from a psychology point of view.
Yeah, that's probably the reason why I don't like Sami Zayn.
Yes. It goes back all the way to 2023.
I mean, it actually does go back to 2023. I was
Mm-hmm.
at a show and Sammy walked by he was in the Bloodline at the time, and he walked by with Jay and Jimmy, and I put my hand out and he just kept walking by. Like he looked at me. So I was in the front row. He looked at me and just kept walking by. And Jay even looked at him like, that was rude. And I was like, damn right it was rude.
You're not going to let that go, huh?
I'm not letting it go.
No,
Talk
that's fair
about
enough.
parasocial bonds, right?
Yeah. Right here.
Yeah, I'm not letting it go.
So when it comes to kind of wrestling storylines you mentioned there's like manipulation from WWE, AEW, etc. in their storylines to make people feel happy, angry, sad, excited. Are there any kind of common psychological tricks you see in these storylines that can do that? Like, certain tropes, certain things people say and do. Are there any kind of, common techniques that are used in these kind of storylines?
So I'm thinking, obviously, we go to negative first. So they will I'm thinking like things that they'll use for heat. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times they'll go personal types of things to try to, but this one I want to be careful on because of something we just had happen with a certain wrestler in AEW. You don't want to go too personal.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about that. But they will try to do certain things to just kind of dig at things that'll just hit them close. But yeah, I mean they'll hit on their sports teams. They'll hit on
Mm-hmm.
certain things that have to do with their town that they'll maybe find endearing, or they might do something that they're proud of to make them cheer about it. If it's, it's a face that comes out and, hey, how about your sports team? They'll do something either way, depending on who it is. But just something like that to kind of bring them up or bring them down, depending what it is that they come out and say. But they're going to try and do anything that is, I would say, personal branding to the person or the town that they're from. And that's, to me, that's something I also learned when I was in sales a long time ago, is you will look at, like, if you look at somebody, and it's psychological, but you look at somebody, you'll say, you look at somebody, hey, I see you're a Metallica fan, and you point out things that you see that is kind of personal to somebody. And then that brings out like a connection.
Yeah.
Really quickly. And, like you say, oh, I see you're a Metallica fan. At that point, that person's probably a metal fan. You can try and find some way to connect with them. And that's like one way that you can start a conversation. And when we think about, like John Cena says, with the fans, you want to have that conversation. So I would try and like find some way to start that conversation then with the fans.
Yeah. We mentioned Pat McAfee in terms of storylines. Why do you think some storylines create such kind of real life arguments among fans like us on social media? So what's going on inside the audience's minds when we're all guilty of this, me included, when we're kind of debating this stuff? Is this by design from the company to get people talking, and it's just, no publicity is bad publicity kind of thing? What's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, some of it's that. If you have people talking, you're trending. Like the first thing that I saw, Pat McAfee was like the number 3 thing trending last night. This morning, it was one of the biggest headlines, obviously. Let's not forget he is part of ESPN. So that's a big part of this too, I think. But yeah, I mean, if you've got people, we had one of 2 things that was going to happen from last night. If we didn't have that, what were people going to be talking about?
Yeah, that's true.
There wasn't a whole lot, really, I would say, from that show. I mean, Danhausen saved that show, but there wasn't a whole lot to take away from the show other than that. But it did get people, I would say, talking, arguing. People are now like, so what are they going to do for WrestleMania? Is he going to be part of WrestleMania? People are at least talking about it. And to have people talking about it is one goal. Their main goal is to have people buy tickets. But it's at least got the conversation starting. One, it has the conversation starting. People are saying, I'm hearing a lot of people complaining about the ticket prices. They have dropped the ticket prices. So, one, it has people talking about the ticket prices. 2, then by talking about the ticket prices, people are looking at the tickets. Then when they look at the tickets, they'll see that the ticket prices have dropped. That might make people consider buying a ticket now. So while I understand now, when I say the ticket prices have dropped, row 2 is still $35,000. So don't think that has dropped. But there are tickets that are available. And I'm looking at the 2-day tickets. The 2-day tickets are $600, $500 I saw. That's still $250, $300 a night or a day. That's not that bad when you think about the fact that it's WrestleMania. And I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, because this is part of what I do, is I take a look at things from a cost standpoint of, does it make sense of what it costs them to put on versus what they have to recoup, and all of the things that come into. I heard we had people were saying that they should be able to charge, what did he say, $30? $30 for a ticket. No, you can't do that. It costs them almost $50 million to put on WrestleMania. And I don't think people realize how much it costs to put on WrestleMania.
It's not just the stadium, is it? It's
not
half the
just
city.
The stadium and the talent. I put together a whole spreadsheet to figure this out. You have to think about, they have risk insurance that they have to pay, legal, attorneys. They have vendors that they have to pay. They have Like there is a slew of things that they have to pay for. And all of the employees that are involved in all of that. Now, people don't make $5 an hour anymore, so we have to make sure that everybody's getting paid correctly too. And all of that that's included, it comes out to somewhere around $50 million. Obviously, I don't know the exact, but to estimate the cost is based on, and I did base this off of what they paid last year and then figuring in, a rough adjustment. To recoup those costs, they have to have no less than $330 per ticket, per night, per ticket. Now, what did I just say that they were charging for some of those tickets?
Yeah, like 600 or something.
For 2 days. So if you split that in two, right. So some of those are being sold at a loss. Now, mind you, they do have the one tickets that are like 30-some thousand. So that will average out. That's all I'm saying is some of those tickets are reasonable when you figure in that they have to average at least $700 for a 2-day ticket. I think it's not completely unreasonable what they're selling them for, considering it's WrestleMania. You look at the Super Bowl tickets, those are this is basically the Super Bowl for WrestleMania or for, wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I'll get off of that soapbox. Sorry. I'm flabbergasted when I hear people say that WrestleMania tickets are too expensive. I understand the $30,000 ones are insane or more, whatever those front row tickets are, but that's the front row. Like you don't have to sit in the front row.
Yeah,
There's plenty of other tickets.
It's not a typical ticket, is it?
Yeah. And and some of those tickets I saw weren't really that far back. So don't think that they were last row tickets that I was looking at. Some of them were not.
You mentioned people like to complain about ticket prices online, and from a social media perspective, people love to complain.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? What is the kind of tendency towards negativity from a psychological perspective when it comes to wrestling?
Negativity breeds negativity. The more you spend time online around negative people, the more negative you are going to become.
Okay.
And the more
it's like a learned behavior kind of thing.
It is a learned behavior.
Yeah.
The more you spend time around negativity in general, the more you will become negative in general. So people who are spending their time around that will just start being that way. And if you find yourself one of these people, I highly recommend you step away from it. Go watch a funny show and I usually say a half an hour. For you, you might want to watch it for 2 hours. Watch a funny movie. Maybe take a break for a week. I don't know. But sometimes, and I'm guilty of it myself. So I'm not just bashing on everybody else here, but it is easy to, when you're in a chat room or you go to multiple spaces or you're just scrolling, it's easy when you find yourself in this realm of negativity to find yourself being negative. And then if you are posting on things that are negative, your algorithm will change so that all you see now is the same thing over and over and over of negativity. So keep that in mind. If you want to change your algorithm, start posting on things that are more positive and you'll start seeing more things that are positive.
Post about cats.
Yes.
Or fluffy animals.
We like cats.
We do. I want to get into the final segment of the show, which is about wrestling companies shaping behaviors, with their various tactics.
Yes.
So when it comes to this, so how do wrestling companies, either they kind of train or shape wrestlers to kind of behave in certain ways so that they get more TV time? What is the kind of reward feedback system in play here?
So fans and talent both learn what gets attention. Like a promo style will get clipped and praised. A certain chant catches on. What?
Yeah.
A social media habit will get people talking. So over time, those type of repeated rewards kind of shape the whole environment. So what I mean, like we'll see this in ring and we see it on social media. So that type of reinforcement theory, culture formation, we also see it in organizations. Those type of behaviors are rewarded. They tend to repeat. They don't have to be formal. Like they're really more natural, I would say. So in wrestling, rewards can be more like the crowd reactions, um, what gets social media trending,
Mm-hmm.
uh, commentary praise. We were talking once before about Booker T. This is a good example, I think. So if anybody watches NXT, uh, I would say he had a lot to do with the attention initially that Trick Williams got,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because Trick's music would come on, and then he would add his little, yeah, whatever.
What?
I always called him the Kool-Aid Man because I thought he sounded like the Kool-Aid Man,
Yeah.
coming out. And that catches on. Then we had Stephanie Vaquer, and
Yes.
Booker T did his little thing with her devil's kiss. That made it so that fans kind of got more excited when she did it. Like they were excited to begin with, I think, obviously, just from the nature of it, but it just brought it to that next level. And then now he's singing along with Joe Hendry. Like
Mm-hmm.
how and it's hilarious in its own right. But any of those little type of things kind of, I think, shape, and we don't even realize that it's happening a lot of times, but just I think the fact that I understand how these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this a lot of times with, I'm going to go off of wrestling for just a second, just to illustrate the point. We see this with shows like American Idol or like any of those X Factor. I'm trying to think, America's Got Talent.
Mm-hmm.
When there is talent that comes out and the judges will give their point of view, we see the audience will shift to go more towards with what the judges think. And you might not even realize that you do it, but you go, oh, well, so and like Simon Cowell thought that that talent was shit. I'm going to now think that that talent was shit because I
Yeah.
trust his judgment. He has more credibility than I do. So I'm going to assume that he's right and I might not be as right as I thought I was. And so if he thinks he's good, that person's good, then maybe he is good. Or if he thinks he's bad, maybe he is bad.
Mm.
We will do the same thing with the commentary a lot of times. We might not even realize it, but Booker T thinks that this is really good. I didn't give them the chance that maybe I should have. I'm going to give Joe Hendry a little bit more of a chance.
Mm.
Booker T thinks he's good. All right, he must be cool. Right? So we might do that just a little bit more. And that's just like a little bit of a reward, I would say. Social media traction a little bit different, I would say, in the aspect of this one. I really am going to talk about it of Ricochet.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use this as an example because I think it's a great example. What
Yeah, sure.
Ricochet said, it got a reward, but not in the way that he thought it was going to. The immediate was, yes, this got attention, great. And then he doubled down when he started getting some backlash from it. He was like, nope, this is trending. This is exactly what I wanted it to do. And what I'm talking about was when he told the person who had MS that criticized his mic skills, I'm glad you have MS. Horrible thing to say. You don't ever, when I say you don't want to pick on somebody's personal issues, I'm talking like you don't want to pick on things that somebody can't control.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
if it's something that you can't control, like a health issue, like anything like that, if somebody can't, that's where I draw the line. If somebody can't control something, you just don't go there. And so he said that it started trending, and he thought, again, in his mind, this is a reward, right? This is exactly what I was hoping for. no, this is not good. It's trending for the wrong reason.
Mm,
And sometimes I would say that's where businesses and wrestlers maybe miss the mark, is you can have something trending, it's not for the right reason.
hmm. Yeah.
So you can get rewards, but they're not always good rewards. Like, somebody said something last night about one of our good friends said it was a good surprise with Pat McAfee. Well, a cereal color can surprise me, but that doesn't mean it's a good surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. Unpredictable is not always good, I would
Right.
say.
So
Yeah.
there's rewards. You get a reward, but it's not always a good reward, is what I'm
Hmm.
trying to say. Is you can be trending, and it doesn't always mean that that's a good thing.
I think Booker T is a good example because
Yeah.
for me with Booker T, I found his interaction with Trick Williams' music as quite humorous and funny.
Yeah.
Do you think that played a role in me getting invested? The fact that I associated it, because it's just an entrance at the end of the day,
Yeah.
but the fact Booker T made it
Oh,
funny, does that play a part in getting more invested in something like that, like a Devil's Kiss, for example?
absolutely. So here's some brain stuff for you. So anytime something is really funny or really, really scary, it's going to stick in your long-term memory longer.
Hmm.
So that's why a lot of times with any trainings, if they can make it funny, or we can't, morally, we can't make it scary, but if we can make it funny, so any teaching, any training, if they tie humor in with it, they will, because that's actually going to make you remember it longer. Just a little side note, and that has to do with your hypothalamus and your
Hmm.
amygdala. So anytime that there's something like that, you're going to remember it longer. But unfortunately, you remember negative things more than positive.
Yeah. 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 I remember my worst WrestleManias probably more than my best ones,
Right.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
outside a couple.
Yeah.
Um,
But you will remember favorable things like that. And so that's a great point, I think, that, I mean, you're going to remember that more than somebody that doesn't have something positive. Like, there's some people's entrances, like, I can't even think of how their entrances go because there's
yeah.
nothing to it.
Yeah, I guess like something can be really good or really bad, but I think what it can't be is boring or
Right.
forgettable. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think an
Yeah.
entrance is one of the most important things that you have, because it's very recognizable from the second. Like, when you have that music hit, you want people to immediately pop because they recognize your music.
And I would guess there's a lot of psychology that goes into writing a theme tune for someone like Trick Williams because,
Mhm.
there's obviously people that know that certain rhythms attract
Yes.
attention. And, if fans can fill in the gaps, Obafemi, Lyra Valkyria's got it, Trick Williams,
Yeah.
then I guess a lot of that goes into production as well.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the kind of pressure for wrestlers to get over and become popular when they're starting out, how do you think this kind of affects wrestlers in their progress to kind of, you know, in their progress to get over? What kind of things do you think they go through?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things that will play in here. Um it de- One depends on how they come in, their mindset when they come into it. Uh if they come in with that resilient mindset of, I'm going to keep trying, I understand that I might not get there right away, then I think that person is going to go a lot farther than somebody who thinks, I'm going to come in, I'm going to make it big. And then when they don't, they get knocked down, and they get knocked down, and they get knocked down, because not everybody's going to be the top guy. And there is a place, I would argue, there's a place for all of these. We a lot of times are like, why isn't so and so the title holder? Why isn't so and so the title
Hmm.
holder? Why
Yeah.
isn't I could
Why isn't
go
my
on and
favorite
on.
champion? Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite the champion. Well, we can't have everybody be a champion.
Yeah.
we we need mid card. We need people at the entry levels coming up. Um, and just same in society, right? We have people at every levels. Um, because not everybody can be CEO, not everybody can be XYZ. So where was I going with this? Oh, so as long as you come into it with the knowledge and the understanding, I think that it's going to take a while to get there. You're not going to get from here to here instantly overnight. I think that people will do fine with that. It's that mentality of I'm going to be the next Cody Rhodes. I'm going to be the next Roman Reigns by next WrestleMania that I think people start to lose their oomph, I guess. And that's when we have some mental well-being issues, we'll say. That's when we see people start getting defeated. However, there's also a problem. I'm going to be frank. I think there are people who get stuck in the mid card. They get typecast, we'll say, in that mid card. They might not ever get out of that spot, and that will start to wear down on a person.
Yeah.
And again, this is also something I think that parallels very well into people's everyday organizational lives of there's people who always feel like they can never move up. No matter what they do, they just can't seem to move up that ladder. And that does wear down on you. I mean, if you've ever been in that situation, you feel like you've done work that is miles ahead of other people, your counterparts, and they get the promotion and you don't. That starts to wear down on you. And that's just really, I think, a point that that person needs to ask themselves, is this the right place for me? And that's just a healthy conversation that somebody needs to have with themselves. And there are certain wrestlers that I'm thinking of that I feel like need to be having that conversation with themselves. First one that I'm thinking of is LA Knight. Probably needs to have that conversation with himself, but I don't know what is in store. You know, I say that always thinking to myself, I don't know what they have in store for him. I don't know what the plans are. They might have plans that I'm not aware of.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's also a problem on the flip side. So rather than a wrestler thinking they're going to be the next Roman Reigns, if the business think that person's going to be the next Roman Reigns, I guess that applies a different pressure, doesn't it?
It does. That does too. Yeah. And I'm thinking, so you've also got that fear. Fear is a big thing that can do some crazy things. So when things are happening so fast for somebody, say you've got somebody who really does have that star quality, star power. I'm thinking an Obafemi or a Trick Williams who's coming in and they immediately have that star power and they're expected to be like this grand. Now you have like, okay, I can do this, but you have that fear. I mean, that can do a lot of things. Fear can either fuel you or it can harm you. So some people use that fear to make them a better performer. And then some people that they'll just freeze up. That anxiety, I think that of fear will stop them. So it really kind of depends on how they use the fear. So far, both of them seem to be using it well. But some people, we will see that fear will just get the best of them. And that's when we'll see maybe some slip ups might happen. And, you know, I think Lyra actually talked about that in Unreal, how she felt like it just kind of got the best of her at one point in one of the matches. And so I think sometimes that pressure does kind of get to you. You feel like, oh my God, I'm in the biggest match of my life. How did we get here? And then that pressure just kind of gets to you a little bit.
Yeah, and they're all human at the end of the day. We have to remember that they're not.
Absolutely.
You know, they might come across as superheroes to some people or just fictional characters, but you know, real people with real feelings, just like us. So it must be very difficult.
Superheroes are people too. Yeah,
that's true. That was everything from my end, Gina. Is there anything else you wanted to cover in this session?
I think I got it all in. I mean, I really wanted to hit on the ticket prices, and I got that in there. So
we got that in there.
Yeah.
No, this has been great. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. Guys, if leave your comments in the description, any questions you have for Gina. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, all that stuff for the algorithm. And until next time, I've been Zeus, and Dr. Gina has been Dr. Gina, and I will see you on the next episode.
Thank you.